Tonight, can they find a jury?
The whole world is watching this New York scam.
Trump's trial turns into the circus he wants.
In that freezing room, freezing. Everybody was freezing in there.
New polling shows why Trump's popularity on New York City streets only keeps growing.
The Hispanics are supporting me at a level that nobody's ever seen before.
We are all Hamas.
Yes, we're all Hamas.
The NYPD starts arresting anti-Israel protesters at Columbia, but still, the university waffles. The danger in refusing to believe terrorist sympathizers.
Will be arrested and charged with trespassing.
Small town justice. At least one person tied to the deaths of two moms in the heartland is nowhere to be found. Did part of the God's Misfits gang get away with double murder? And grumpy old men.
Because there were a lot of cannibals for real in that part of New Guinea.
And the statement of Robert E. Lee, never fight uphill, me boys, never fight uphill. They were fighting uphill. He said, wow, that was a big mistake.
How falling asleep and lying became routine in presidential politics.
So what? Huh? What?
Huh? All right, welcome to the fairest show on television. We start with breaking news out of New York. We have a jury in the Donald Trump business records case. The business records case sounds a lot more boring than the hush money case or the Stormy Daniels case, but business records is what it's about. And it has been a wild day. Try this one on. Two people got kicked off the jury before the case even started. Trials come down to math. Opening statements likely happen on Monday. And this is all you need to keep in mind. 12 to convict, 1 for Trump to get a hung jury and declare victory. There may not be 12 more important Americans than the 12 Trump jurors for the next 8 weeks. We don't know their names. We know a lot about them. You can see on your screen information about them. We're going to go through each one. They and they alone will decide whether Trump falsified business records when he paid off porn star Stormy Daniels. The former president spoke about the newly seated jury moments after court ended for the day and brought with him some props.
Supposed to be in New Hampshire. I'm supposed to be in Georgia. I'm supposed to be in North Carolina, South Carolina. I'm supposed to be in a lot of different places campaigning. But I've been here all day on a trial that really is a very unfair trial.
You think things are wild now, a defendant holding a press conference every day after court? We haven't even gotten to Cohen, Karen, and Stormy. Stormy Daniels, and whatever she will wear to trial, admitted perjurer and star witness Michael Cohen, and former Playboy playmate Karen McDougal will all join the fun. So for the next 8 weeks of trial, just remember, it's math. 12 and 1. With us tonight, Joellen Demetrius, jury consultant in a number of high-profile cases, including the O.J. Simpson trial, the Rodney King trial, among others, and New York criminal defense attorney Michael DeSharo. Appreciate you both being here. Thank you very much. Joellen, just want to start with you, and we have the demographic information, right? Whether they're married or not and have kids, where they get their news, and what their job is. As you look through this list, and I know you've studied it and studied some of the notes that have been sent by reporters who were in the courtroom, what strikes you?
Well, there are several things that strikes me. Number one, juror number 11 is a woman who today in her voir dire indicated that she thought that Trump was a very selfish man, and she works in a public, a civil servant capacity, and Trump's team actually tried to challenge her for cause. The judge denied it, and so she now sits on this jury. I think also the fact that we have two civil lawyers on this case is hugely important. And the reason behind it, number one, is one of them is bound to be the foreperson of the jury. Number two, even if they're not the foreperson of the jury, people are going to acquiesce to their views and going to ask them, well, based on your knowledge of the law, the jury instructions say this, the verdict says this, how do we parse this all out? So that's a concern. Also, the fact that they are lawyers. Lawyers are trained to always take the other side in terms of the view of any case. So it could go either way for either side, either the prosecution or for the defense. And I also would like to add that these 12 people may not necessarily be the 12 people that go through to the end. We know today there were 2 jurors that were lost because of information that both sides learned about them.
Yeah, so Trump evidently, I'm being told, is out of the peremptory challenges, the way of sort of saying they were going to kick somebody off. I guess that's how they ended up with juror number 11. Michael, how much of this is already appealable?
The fact that one of the jurors was kicked off for lying is a problem. All of the challenges made for cause that were not granted are appealable. We're just getting started in the process of this jury is probably going to be sworn in tomorrow. Once they're sworn in, jeopardy attaches. But will they remain fair and independent? By that I mean, what is going to come out more about these jurors and how are the jurors going to behave? In addition, I think the jury consultant was dead on. Having 2 attorneys on this case is a stroke of perfection by the defense, because this is going to come down to intent, and that intent is difficult to parse except for people's actions, and then credibility. And I can't agree more with your other guest that they're going to follow 2 lawyers when it comes to getting into the weeds of this case. For the defense, it's a great addition, and I cannot believe the prosecution let 2 attorneys on where there's so much technical parts of this case. Wow.
All excellent points. Okay, so that's 2 book contracts at least, right? 1 for each of the attorneys on this case. Joellen, if you think about this jury pool or the jury itself, and you're right to point out that you could have people kicked off and the alternates come in, but is the 12R right now? Who does, other than the 2 lawyers, who does the defense focus in on?
Well, in terms of being,
and how do they do it? How do they do it in the? Yeah. I mean, how does the defense focus on getting to that 1, right? Because that's the math. They love 12, but how and who do they focus on getting the 1? What would be your advice to both the defense and to the defendant, for lack of a better term?
So what any party does in a case, and certainly the defense will do this, is they will go back through the information shared in the questionnaire and voir dire to see how did they get their news, what's important to them, even looking at their social media to determine those things that are important. They will pick out those kernels of information that may appeal to that particular juror, whichever juror they are targeting in terms of being somebody that is potentially favorable to them. So that's generally how it's done.
All right, Michael, I'm trying to find a way that this could be going better for Donald Trump. Obviously, probably, if he gets acquitted, probably politically it'd be one of the best things that's ever happened to him, because it would prove his narrative true. But as you're watching these events, and look, to be fair, Donald Trump is doing the very best he can to turn this into a circus. He thrives in chaos. Could it be going better for him?
I really think the selection of the attorneys, and I don't want to harp on this, but this is such an important point because we have a disgraced attorney as the star witness. The witness that's going to prove intent for the prosecution is a convicted perjurer and former attorney who's been disbarred. And as attorneys, we look at disbarred attorneys as people that shouldn't have been attorneys in the first place. I mean, these are people that violated every oath we took. So they're going to be viscerally objecting to Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen is on the internet every day talking about how much of a liar he is and how much of a bad guy Donald Trump is. I expect Michael Cohen to be cross-examined for days if it's done correctly.
Yeah, no mercy, you might say. Certainly the feelings by Donald Trump about Michael Cohen. Joel, just get you real quickly on both that cross-examination, but also this issue for these jurors that there was one person who said, I went off because they were already getting harassed. You have to imagine there are a couple people who wanted to be on this jury so they could write books or they could cash in some way or another or become famous and get their 15 minutes. But for anybody else, I can't imagine how it is not terrifying, number one. And you think about, weeks of trial? Can anybody endure that kind of pressure? The texts, the emails, the social media stuff that's gonna for sure come to all of these people.
Well, that's so very true. I mean, it's almost as though they're witnesses in the case, and everyone who thinks they know anything about them will start to publish information on the internet or other resources as well. These people, have to be concerned on many different levels. We already learned that one of the jurors was concerned because her family and friends had already figured out that she was on it. These people have to be concerned that perhaps doxing is going to occur. These people, from a more conspiratorial aspect, maybe you're concerned that if they acquit President Trump with the president, with President Biden's administration, that the IRS, the FBI, or one of the other alphabet agencies is going to come after him. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons to be absolutely terrified. And let's not even talk about the nut jobs that are out there that, want to perhaps eliminate that individual.
All great points. Look, it will be wild over the next 8 weeks or so, and Donald Trump coming out and talking and holding up articles about himself is just going to be the very beginning. Michael and Joellen, you guys will be with us through the duration. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leland.
Speaking of wild, things got wild on the campus of Columbia University as police began arresting protesters who don't like Israel very much. Why did it take so long for the cops and the administration to even start to do the right thing?
Will be arrested and charged with trespassing. This is the New York Police Department. You are participating in unauthorized encampment.
And who is the fifth member of God's Misfits? An arrest warrant in the double murder of two moms in Oklahoma mentions a mysterious fifth person. Did he rat on his accomplices? Or is he still out there on the run? Today, for the very first time, we are seeing real repercussions for the people who keep celebrating Hamas's brutal terror attack on Israel. The NYPD was called to clear out, of all places, Columbia University. Here's what happened when the cops tried clearing out the Gaza Solidarity encampment from Columbia University's South Lawn.
Arrested and charged with trespassing. This is the New York Police Department. You are participating in unauthorized encampment.
We are Hamas!
You're Hamas, wow. That's a good one. You're what? You're Hamas?
Yes, we're all Hamas, pig!
All right, so you got to break that down for a second. I am Hamas. We are all Hamas. To a man who had an Israeli flag with him. Hamas's charter means they want to kill all Jews. That's what it says. And then Hamas says they'll come for America. But for some reason, nobody seems to be believing the terrorist wannabes with death to America and everything else. Mandani Annie grew up in Iran and warned America why it might be worth paying attention to these folks.
So I was born in Iran under the same regime that is supporting Hamas right now. And every single morning we were forced to chant death to America, death to Israel. And it's almost like shocking to watch these Americans support an organization that wants them dead and hates every single thing about their values.
It is shocking. Mandani will be with us in just a moment. We want to go out to Laura Ingle, who is at Columbia University, just off the campus, as the protests now continue on the streets. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Leland. Well, it's certainly been a chaotic day, both inside and outside of the university. It was quiet just a few minutes ago, but as soon as they saw our lights go up, you can hear the protesters and demonstrators coming around. Let me show you what's happening right here. We've got the NYPD that has been called in, and that's been the very big part of the story right now. And you can show, well, we'll show you guys. We've got this group of people over here right now, not happy that we're here, but over 100 pro-Palestinian protesters were taken into police custody today. According to the police, the NYPD hauled away busloads of demonstrators earlier today. Come on back to me. Come on back this way. We want to show you this other side down here. We've got the NYPD in riot gear down there, and as you can see, those white buses, those are Department of Correction buses that are ready to haul people away, and after numerous warnings to disperse, police were called in, some arriving on scene, as you see there in riot gear, after more than those 100 students set up inside the south lawn of Columbia University. They set up an encampment and vowed to stay until the university agrees to divest from companies and institutions that they say profit from Israel-related businesses. University officials say the protest is going on, and the mayor chiming in tonight saying students have the right, but they do not have the right to violate university policy. They've been armed with signs and bullhorns, as you can hear, waving flags, demanding an end to the war on Gaza, making their voices heard. Now, the protest comes as the university's president and board of trustees went before a congressional committee to defend their actions as a wave of anti-Semitism hit the school in the months following the Israeli-Hamas conflict. New York Civil Liberties Union just released a statement online denouncing university leadership for the way it has handled the protest, saying this: Columbia's move to send in police so quickly after these demonstrations began chills student expression, marks a significant departure from past practice and raises questions about the university's desperate treatment of students based on their views. An hour ago, NYPD officials say student protesters called police officers the KKK baby killers and told officers to kill themselves. We've had quite a lot of yelling and chanting out here on the streets. Of course, demonstrators do not look like they are going away anytime soon as we stand outside of Columbia University tonight to let you know what's going on. Leland?
All right, Laura, thank you very much. We'll come back to you as news warrants. Please let us know if things kick off, as occasionally they do with this crowd. Mandani Annie is a Jewish Iranian. Her family fled the Teheranian regime, the Ayatollah, and she is also the woman in the video we just showed you talking about the Hamas attacks. It's interesting when we look at the back of Laura's live shot, there was a sign there that says "Victory to the Palestinian Resistance." This isn't about ending the war in Gaza or about giving the Palestinians Gaza. This is about destroying Israel. This is about killing Jews. It's pretty simple. I'm wondering why it seems so difficult for Americans to believe that and take people at face value when they say it.
I think because of misinformation, there is an entire generation of Americans who are helping foreign terrorists achieve their agenda. You can't disassociate what they're saying and their rhetoric with the very explicit goals of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran has been sowing this division. They've been doing everything they can to dismantle the West. Everything about their ideology is anti-Western, anti-American. They are a terrorist regime that oppresses women and their people, and they are the ones.
So you think we should take them? So when people say death to America and I am Hamas and all these things, we should take them at face value.
Well, yes, and also these protests is what led to the Ayatollah taking over Iran, right? It sort of looked very much like this. And, I don't know what the code of conduct of Columbia is, but I can sure tell you that it's not preferential to Jews, as we saw in the hearing yesterday. But as a mother and an activist, I have been doing everything I can to meet with students across the country and to hear their stories. And we have to recognize that, yes, free speech is absolutely an important, critical cornerstone of American democracy, but there is like a right to safety and a right to practice your religion. I talked with a student who said, you know, his roommate transferred out of Cornell because he didn't feel safe wearing a yarmulke on campus. Where is his right to religion, right? Like, these students are trying to study in libraries and they're having die-ins and they can't study.
Yeah, I guess I view it a little differently than when it's on when it's on college campuses. College campuses have lots of different things, and whether it's a safe space or not, and on and on and on. There's a difference, though, between supporting Palestinians' right to their own state, agree or disagree with that, and chanting death to America and offering material support to terrorism and talking about supporting terrorists, which is what's happening now. I hate to make this political, but I looked at your Twitter feed, and on the top of it is a video of your daughter with President Biden, something you're very proud of. And I'm genuinely curious if you feel as though the lack of really strong statements by this administration about these people, and in some cases sort of cozying up to them and providing them comfort, which certainly the administration has, isn't part of the problem.
I find that this administration has been very, very supportive of Israel. So I don't personally agree with that statement, but I also don't think that this moment is about Democrats versus Republicans. I really think that it's important that we recognize this is about humanity versus hatred, and very, very radical ideologies that deeply threatened our democracy. And I think the most important focus should be on what is being said and the actual explicit threat that it poses to Americans and the West and all of our allies.
Well, and I will tell you, there's a lot of people of your political persuasion who aren't willing to speak as clearly as you are about it. And I know that you probably lost some friends or gotten some criticism for doing that, and it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing. So we appreciate you being here. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you. It's important.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Both President Biden and former President Trump's path to the White House runs through gas stations and bodegas frequented by America's working class. We'll show you the new polling separating Scranton Joe and Dapper Don by income and by how many hours you work to find the real working class hero. All right, live pictures right now of Washington, D.C. on a beautiful April evening, 7:30 p.m. President Biden just got back to the White House from a 3-day campaign blitz across Pennsylvania. Must-win state for him. Obviously, former President Trump just wrapped up another 8-hour session in a Manhattan court. And look, there's a big opportunity right now for Joe Biden. Trump is sidelined in court. President Biden is out barnstorming the country, specifically Pennsylvania. It's helping Biden in the head-to-head matchup polls. And right now, Joe Biden is even in Pennsylvania. A new Emerson, though, poll that we found lays out America's political divide in a way we have rarely seen it described. The new poll breaks down support for Trump and Biden, not based on political affiliation or education, but those based on how many hours they work. So you can see if someone doesn't work, slightly favor Donald Trump, maybe perhaps people who are retired. But then people who work less than 20 hours, 20 to 30 hours, by vast margin support President Biden. 39 to 40 hours, 30 to 40 hours, still support President Biden. As soon as people start working 40, 50, and 60 hours a week, the numbers go wildly towards President Trump. Now, you might say, okay, well, maybe it's just rich Republicans who want Trump's tax cuts. So now we look at it by income. The opposite would be true. It is people who have far below the average income that disproportionately support Donald Trump, those with far above the average income who disproportionately support Joe Biden. Last month, we told you about a book called White Rule Rage. It highlights the divide between working class and professional class, working class and laptop class, described as a searing portrait and damning takedown of America's proudest citizens, who are also the least likely to defend its core principles. The authors of that book, Thomas Schaller and Paul Waldman, are standing by again tonight. We look forward to another conversation. But before we get to them, President Trump, former President Trump's latest attempt to woo working class voters came Tuesday, not in rural Kansas, but at a stop at a New York convenience store, the same store where a deadly stabbing happened in 2022. Former president is actually already making plans to advertise off of his visit.
Invited me
crowds gathering up a bodega.
This is the moment Mr. Trump arrived tonight. People lined up along 139th and Broadway as he made his way inside the Hamilton Heights bodega to meet with Jose Alba.
Francisco Marte appeared with the former president on Tuesday. He joins us now. He's spokesman for the United Bodegas of America. We appreciate you being here. Thank you. How much of those crowds, to be fair, were Trump supporters that the Trump campaign called, Francisco, and said, hey, come on out?
Hey, thanks. Let me clear. It's a Bodega and Small Business Group. That's the organization that we invite Donald Trump.
Got it. All right. So I know you were there because the bodega, your group has endorsed Donald Trump, but the big crowds that were out front that we saw, and most of them, at least as we could tell, a lot of them were Hispanics and a lot of them were African Americans. Were those people that the campaign brought in, or were those actual just supporters in Harlem who heard Donald Trump was there and showed up?
No, that was a very big surprise because we didn't promote that. We even let that know to the news, even was after 12 o'clock. So the people, they find out quick, and there was a lot of people that were asking why I didn't let them know that he was coming to Washington High. All of those people that just went there because they support Donald Trump. They like law and order. That's what we looking forward to, and that's why we thank Donald because he came and he said, I support the Bodega and Small Business Group for what you're doing against the crimes. So we really be so pleased with Trump having him there in the hood the first time ever the President of the United States goes to the Bodega.
Yeah, you think about current President Biden, right? He went to a Wawa in Pennsylvania, Sheetz as well, both convenience stores. Typically, you think it'd be reversed, right? That the President Biden would be the guy at a bodega in New York. You think what kind of response do you think he would get there?
Well, right now I don't think that he will have a lot of response, and I believe that he will have more protests than welcome call with the situation that is happening, not only with the crime, but even with the problems that we are facing also on the borders. So that is affecting a lot of New York as well. I don't believe that he will have the same welcome that Donald Trump has on Harlem.
Got it. All right, Francisco, thank you. We appreciate the perspective, and thank you for joining us. Thomas Schaller, Paul Waldman, authors of White Rule Rage, The Threat to American Democracy, are with us now. Thank you. I think it makes sense, right, when you look at the voters working longer hours favor Trump and the income disparity as well, Paul. But in retrospect, is the divide really so much about race in America as it is about class?
Well, those are both important divides. There isn't just one divide. And so there are important divides about geography. There are important divides about race. There are important divides about class. Those all matter in a campaign like this one and in politics generally. So, I mean, you can try to kind of slice and dice the data to find a way to make one candidate look like he's doing well among certain types of people and certain other types of people. But, I think that I'm not quite persuaded that Donald Trump is going to get a better reception in Harlem than Joe Biden does. The fact of the matter is, Biden won New York City. I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but by an extraordinary margin.
80 plus,
and he won New York. Yeah. So, you can find some people there who are Trump voters, sure. And, you can go to the whitest rural area in America where Trump gets 80% of the vote, and you can find some Biden voters. That's true. It's a big country, and there's a lot of different kinds of people.
Yeah, no, it is a big country. Thomas, Trump's bodega visit should scare the heck out of Democrats, says the Daily Beast. I'm wondering if some of the same grievances that you all found among white rural voters don't also exist among working class Latinos, working class blacks, not only in Harlem, but in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in North Carolina?
I mean, sure. I think Latinos and people of color generally who are working class, and a disproportionate share of them are working class compared to white citizens, are worried about the economy and a variety of other issues. But we know what's fascinating from not just the 2016 and 2020 presidential results, that Trump did far better with people over 100,000 median income than he did below. Even if you make the threshold 50,000, he did better than Biden or Hillary Clinton did. So, there's a lot of talk about working class and Trump appealing to the working class. That's true among white voters, all right? Working class whites and non-college downscale whites vote more Republican than their more affluent white counterparts. But as soon as you mix in non-whites, that's where Biden or Hillary or Democrats going back election after election do better overall. So there is a class divide, but that class divide is much more pronounced among white voters than it is non-white voters.
All right, so you think about this, and we've seen polling, whether it plays out, that Biden is down about 15 points among Latinos and among blacks compared to 2020 exits. But, Paul, I want to get you back on the issue of the book. And I think you probably all knew that it was going to be a fairly controversial title. Some of the opinion pieces in the Washington Post want to help Trump keep up the white rural rage stereotyping. The Atlantic, an utterly misleading book about rural America. And I'm wondering, as you guys have heard the response from it, if if putting those three things together, white rural rage, was good for selling books, but in fairness and in hindsight, might have added to the problem rather than helped it.
Well, it has certainly been revealing. You can criticize Trump voters. You can even criticize certain groups of white voters. But when you start to talk about rural voters, people get very, very upset. And that is one of the things that we argue in the book, is that they have this kind of elevated status. They're supposed to be the real Americans. They're supposed to be the people who are most honest and true and have the best values. And if you say something about them that doesn't perhaps reflect well on them, and of course not all of them, but many of them, then people really get their hackles up. And so, yeah, we've taken a lot of criticism, and that's fine. Yeah. But we think this is an important debate to have, that the kind of core of Donald Trump's support, where that really put him over the top in a lot of states in 2016, was his support in rural areas among rural whites. They went from supporting him by 62% in 2016 to 71% in 2020, even as the rest of the country was moving away from him and toward Joe Biden. So this is an important political story, and we don't think that extraordinary support among rural whites was just because they loved that big tax cut. I think that, and Tom shares my view on this, that the less savory parts of Trump's appeal, the xenophobia and the bigotry and the way he plays on people's resentments, that had a big part to do with his popularity among rural whites. And that's something that I think deserves a conversation. And yeah, some people don't like the conversation, and then we'll say, oh, it's going to make it harder for Democrats to appeal to them. Okay. But it's a conversation we need to have.
Look, I always welcome the conversation. It's an important one. I'm going to give Tom just a quick last thought on this, but I'll do it in the form of a question. You say that somehow rural Americans become more aggrieved, or people get their hackles up when you go after them. I mean, I think if someone wrote a book and you just changed it to urban black rage, there'd be an awful lot of hackles up, wouldn't there?
Sure, but we provide the evidence, right? It's rural whites who are least supportive of the idea that immigrants strengthen our country. They have the least support for and the least welcoming communities for gay Americans. They express highest levels of racial consciousness and racial resentment. They express the highest levels of support for insurrectionist attitudes, meaning that they think Trump had the election stolen from him, and that in one poll that he should be restored to office, quote unquote, by force. So, I mean, they have the most transgressive political attitudes, the least support for our constitutional pluralist secular democracy, highest support for white nationalism, white Christian nationalism. And the fact that you're not allowed to criticize them, right, which we anticipated in the book, is only being proven by our critics.
To be fair,
extraordinarily defensive.
the one thing I really admire, and I said this the last time we had you guys on, is your willingness to come on, have the conversation, bring the data, and to be thoughtful about it. We always appreciate it. You guys are welcome back anytime. We're better for it.
Thanks, Leland.
Thanks, Leland.
Yeah, thank you. The arrest warrants for God's misfits. Yeah, they have some sort of odd views, you might say. I think we could all agree on that. The arrest warrants mention a fifth person participating in the abduction and killing of 2 moms in Oklahoma. Who is he? Did he turn in his accomplices? Is he still on the run? And what was the real mission of God's misfits? Mention another name as possibly involved in the case, but they haven't been arrested. Police told NewsNation it is still an ongoing investigation. New video shows searchers finding the remains of Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly on land that was one of the suspects' leased land in Oklahoma. The murders happened amid a heated custody battle between Veronica and one of the suspects, Tiffany Adams, who is the grandmother of Veronica's children. Tiffany and the 3 suspects are part of an anti-government group who call themselves God's Misfits and were said to be on a mission before the murders. Senior NewsNation correspondent Brian Enton has been crisscrossing the rural prairie from Kansas to Oklahoma and joins us now from Oklahoma. Just before we get going, Brian, I just wanted to see if you can zoom out for a second, because I've spent time out in rural Oklahoma and rural Arkansas, Kansas. A lot of our viewers have not. And give us a sense of just sort of how vast and how rural where you are and where these crimes were.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. It's beautiful country out here. Western Oklahoma, we're near Kansas, we're near Texas, we're near Colorado and New Mexico. All the states come together. It's farmland, it's pasture as long as the eye can see. You've got grain, you've got beef, you've got pork. Likely some of the food you eat came from this part of the country. So it's beautiful, which is one of the reasons this has just been such a barbaric murder and people here are so shocked. You mentioned that fifth person. His name is Paul Grice. He's also in the arrest affidavits. One of the suspect's daughters told police that he was involved. And we have learned through sources that he was called in, that he was taken into custody, that he was also questioned, but that he was let go, Leland. So Paul Grice was let go. He has not been charged. Why? We can't say for sure. It appears they don't have enough evidence. I mean, the suspect's daughter said he was involved, but once they got him in custody and started questioning him, there wasn't enough evidence, and he's out right now, Leland.
Wow. It's such a wild story, and then you add in God's misfits and sort of the mystery of what other things these folks had planned. Brian, phenomenal reporting on this story. As always, we're going to keep following it. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Leland.
Yeah. Beautiful sunsets in Oklahoma as well. There have been a few songs about that. One sleeps in court. The other tells tales of cannibals and headhunters in the jungle going after his uncle in World War II. Whoever wins. Will Air Force One need an escalator? A few hours ago, the White House had to admit that cannibals did not, in fact, eat President Biden's uncle. His uncle died in a World War II plane crash. Here's the president yesterday.
He got shot down in New Guinea, and they never found the body because there were a lot of cannibals for real in that part of New Guinea.
Well, turns out he was shot down or disappeared over the Pacific. Sharks might have gotten him, but not cannibals. For his part, Trump reportedly fell asleep twice in his trial this week. Democratic strategist, former senior advisor to the Lincoln Project, Joe Trippi, is with us. I think what's kind of interesting is that the fact that of the 2 men who are running for president, one will be president, one has some significant issues with telling the truth, both of them do, to be fair, and one falls asleep. And the media kind of doesn't care anymore. It's like it's almost baked into the American populace.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure any of this has anything to do with either of them being old. I mean that. I know they're both old. Don't get me wrong. But, I don't think Trump fell asleep with the jury, when they were trying to pick the jury because he's old. I think he just bored. I mean, it wasn't about him. It wasn't, it wasn't fixated on they're not talking about Love and Me. And, Joe Biden, same thing. I mean, his uncle served, his son served. He mangles things from time to time. That's true, but I don't think it has anything to do with him being old. I was, there in 87, 88 when he ran the first time. Joe Biden's been mangling stories and getting things out of sorts from the beginning.
To be fair, I'll put it this way: you are charitable, okay? I mean, I think the first time he ran, he had to apologize for plagiarizing part of a speech. So we mangling into the different things. But again, the Daily Beast wrote this piece about Trump falling asleep, and who knows whether he fell asleep or was just acting like he fell asleep. Either way, anytime we fall asleep in a stressful situation, those are indications that your brain is prioritizing it. There's all these sort of things going. But I guess to my point is, and you may be right, that it has nothing to do with them being old. These are just who these two men are. But at some point, is the fact that nobody's covering it or not surprising proof that it doesn't really matter as much as sort of we would want it to matter to pick the most powerful man in the world?
Well, no, I do think you're right that it's sort of baked into the cake. I mean, there's a few years difference age between them, but they're old guys running for president of the United States. That's what the two parties decided to do. And I think there's other overriding factors that go beyond the age question that matter more to people, whether it's abortion, the abortion bans, whether it's the economy. And so I just think that the age question is there for sure with both of them, but that in each case there's something that overrides that as a reason to vote for or against them. And I still believe that with a lot of things that are going on today, like the Arizona court.
That's a good point. People are voting. Yeah, they're voting on issues as much as the man. Unfortunately, we got to run. We're out of time. It's great having you back on the program. We're looking forward to seeing you in D.C. All right.
Yeah, great being on with you, Leland. Good. Yeah, thanks for having me. For sure,
Joe. Yeah, Joe. Thank you very much. It's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. Here's Chris.